In today's video, I'm going to tell you 5 things that you need to consider before you have a hair transplant. Stay tuned. Hey my fellow follicle frontiersmen, it's DJ from Keratin Brotherhood. Welcome back to the channel. If it's your first time here, as always, welcome. Keratin Brotherhood is here to help you build confidence in your hair loss through transparency, empathy, and positivity. If you enjoyed today's content, make sure you subscribe to the channel and also click the little bell to turn on notifications. That way you can be one of the first to be notified whenever I upload new content. In 2014, I had a hair transplant. 5,500 hair transplant here in South Korea. It was probably one of the best decisions that I've ever made when it comes to dealing with my hair loss. And I received a lot of questions about how much did the hair transplant cost, or the quality of the hair transplant, who was the surgeon. I get all of these questions, but I think instead of asking me questions, you should be asking yourself questions about 5 things that you have to consider before you get a hair transplant. Now, the first thing that you have to consider is that a hair transplant is not some magical procedure. They're not performing alchemy. They're not creating something new from thin air. When they do a hair transplant, you're simply moving hairs from one area of your head to other areas of your head, or from one part of your body to another part of your body. You have a limited supply of hair, guys, meaning you have a set number of hairs on your head that can be transplanted. If you want to make an analogy, think of furniture in your living room. Now you can move the couch and the TV and the table. You can move all of these things around as much as you want to, but the overall coverage of the room is gonna remain the same. And that's exactly what happens when you get a hair transplant, guys. So don't think that if you have a hair transplant that you're suddenly gonna have full coverage. In my case, I had a lot of hairs moved around from the back of my head, but I was fortunate enough to have a very large donor site. There's a lot of factors that come into play when it comes to determining how much coverage you can get realistically. But one thing that remains constant across all guys who want to get hair surgery is that you have a limited supply of hair to work with. So what that means is if you get a hair transplant, you must understand you're not going to look like you did when you were 25 years old or when you were 20 years old. For now, it's impossible. To be honest with you, a lot of guys, they go in with that mindset and they end up disappointed. And then it leads into the next thing that you have to consider, guys. So the second thing you have to consider is something called hair greed. And it is exactly what it says, hair greed, greedy for hair. So you get a hair transplant, you're like, oh, okay, my coverage is not what I thought it was gonna be. And then what do you decide to do? You decide to go for a second or a third hair transplant. And after consecutive procedures, what you end up doing is you over-harvest your donor area. And so you end up with like scars all over the back of your head. Even if you do FUE, you're gonna have so much over-harvesting in the back that it's just gonna look unnatural, guys. Don't get greedy. Remember, too much of anything is a bad thing. Hair surgeries are no different. Now, the third thing that I suggest that you consider is shopping around and doing your research. You can go on the message boards and you can read people's, hair transplant stories. You can ask for recommendations about surgeons, and you can talk to guys about their hair surgery and how they felt about it. But every guy is different. Every hair grade is different. Every man's state of hair loss is different. So the only way that you can get great information and useful information in order to make a decision is to actually consult with the hair restoration surgeon. Don't just land on the first surgeon that somebody on a message board or on YouTube, and that includes me. Don't just go to a surgeon because some influencer or some guy recommended them to you. He's not you. He, being the guy who got the surgery, is not you. Your hair situation is different, guys. Go visit a surgeon, then visit another surgeon. Get another opinion. That's actually what I did. I actually consulted with 8 different surgeons here in South Korea before I decided to go with one that I actually felt really comfortable with. And the determining factor for me was not price. Now, price is important. Let's not talk lightly about the price, because hair surgeries is fucking expensive, dude. That shit's expensive as hell. I don't care if you get it in Turkey. It's still relatively expensive because you have to consider flight costs and hotel stays, and there's just all kinds of things that add into the total cost of getting hair surgery. I'm not saying not to consider the price as being important, but in my personal opinion, I think the most important thing to consider is the quality of the surgeon's work. Ask to see their portfolio, guys. Every surgeon who is somebody should have a portfolio of previous clients that they've worked on. And definitely ask to see pictures of clients that are similar to you in terms of, their stage of hair loss, and also, their ethnicity, their hair grade. So when you go visit your surgeon for the consultation, ask to see their portfolio. Any surgeon who's like, I don't want to show you. Any surgeon that is apprehensive about giving you their portfolio to look at, just get up and walk out the door. You have no obligation to stay there for that. The last thing you want to do is lay on a table under the knife with a surgeon who is not competent enough or skilled enough to perform hair surgery on your head. Okay, at the end of the day, guys, your gut will tell you if this is a good decision or a bad decision. Now, the fourth thing you need to consider before going for hair surgery is your age. Hair loss can strike at any age, but if you're in your early 20s or even in your teens and you're losing your hair, guys, I know it's rough. I started losing my hair when I was 21 years old. Okay, I know it's rough, but what's not a good choice is for you to go for hair surgery at 21 years old. And the reason is because everybody loses their hair differently, meaning your hair fall occurs in a different pattern from others. And there's all kinds of different patterns when it comes to hair loss. If you're not familiar with that, I'll drop a link in the description below. If you're not familiar with Norwood Scale, you can look at the pictures that are there and compare your own hair loss with that to kind of get a general idea of what stage your hair loss is at now. If you're young, more than likely your hair loss has not progressed to the point where a doctor can make a determination about, okay, this is what your hair loss pattern is. Just imagine you get hairs transplanted like here into your hairline, and you get hairs transplanted on the top, and you get the surgery, and a year later your hair grows back in and you're like, wow, this looks really good. Fast forward 5 years. Now what's happening? Well, hopefully you've been taking finasteride to keep the hair that you already have. But if you didn't, you can still lose hair, which means that you lose the hair in the areas that you would have lost them anyways, but the transplanted hairs are still there, which is going to give you this really patchy and pluggy look because you're losing hairs around the transplanted hairs. This is why all ethical surgeons would not perform a hair surgery on somebody who's under the age of, say, 24 or 25. Because it's impossible to know how aggressive your hair loss is and what the hair loss pattern is going to be. So if you're a young guy, I recommend going for other hair loss treatment options. Finasteride and minoxidil and dermarolling are always great choices. I have links down in the description below to videos about how to dermaroll or how to use minoxidil, but don't go for hair surgery at 21 years old because your 30-year-old self is probably going to kick yourself in the ass. Now, the fifth thing you have to consider is not actually a consideration, it's a piece of advice. And that piece of advice is to sleep on it. Sleep on the decision to get hair restoration surgery. For me, I told you I started losing my hair at 21 years old. By the time I was 25, 26 years old, I was pretty much bald. I mean, like completely bald. And I didn't have my hair transplant surgery until I was 30, guys. I was 30 years old, which means that's like 9 years from the time that I noticed my hair loss until the time I got my surgery. It took me 9 years. Now, granted, the majority of the time was spent, not having enough money to pay for the surgery because that's just expensive, But it took me from the time I seriously researched and had the money in hand to do the surgery, it took me about a year to make that decision about the surgeon, to make the decision about the time frame, to make sure that my work and my job life was balanced enough where I can have the surgery and give myself time to recover. There was a lot of consideration I gave before I actually went under the knife, because this is not a thing like, oh, wait a second, guys, I made a mistake. Can you please remove this gigantic scar from the back of my head so that I can start over again? No. All right, you have to understand, if you get FUT surgery like I did, yes, you're going to have a scar. Now, I'm using kind of like an eyebrow pen to conceal my scar, but it's still, it's fairly visible, especially if I'm not concealing it. FUE is no different. Will you have scars? Yes. Many people say you won't have scars, but guys, if your hair is cut low, like a buzz cut, you're gonna see these little pinpoint scars all over the back of your head, and you'll see this visible pattern of thinning, especially if they've over-harvested that area. This is a life-changing decision, for better or for worse. What I mean to say for better, you could end up like me and just, everything worked the way it's supposed to. The hair, you have a good survival rate, over 90% survival rate, and you have good regrowth, and it's thick and it looks natural, and you might end up having to wear a concealer, but hey, it's still good, On the other hand, you could have terrible results, meaning the survival rate of the transplanted hairs is under 50%, you end up with this really pluggy look, and to top it all off, you have a scar on the back of your head. That is not something you can just take back. SMP is not going to make the scar go away. Even with SMP, you're going to see the scar. The last thing I want you guys to do is to make an impulse decision about getting a hair transplant and regretting your decision a year or more later down the line. So I hope you found this video helpful, guys. Make sure you subscribe to the channel if you're new here. My name is DJ from Keratin Brotherhood. I'll see you guys in the next video.